Hi, Lorenzo here, episode 15 of KSP Next, a realism overhaul RP0 campaign. Today we're trying to utilize a window to Mars. That's of course a launch window. First things first, however, and that's to repeat last episode's retriever mission. In the previous episode, the mission went pretty well, but the re-entries failed. Once because it was going the wrong way forward, as backwards into the atmosphere, and the other one because it was going too steep. Anyway, this mission is progressing pretty much completely 100% identical to the last mission. So we're going to be skipping through these launch sequences. You can see the first stage kind of struggling with the heavier payloads we're putting on it. It has serviced us from the first person into space right up to lunar missions right now. It's a trusty first stage, but we're going to replace it in fact tonight. More about that later. Here we go, second stage with storable propellants, no control because we don't have the tech, also more on that later. And well, as I said, this is all available for your viewing pleasure in episode 14, of which I'll put a link right about now because my um, screen is now showing a black screen, basically saying the same thing I just said with a link below it. Anyway, the important bit is after this mission we're going to re-enter, and because this is going to be a really long re-entry, I've sped it up 600%, 6 times. Basically, I'm aiming at a periapsis of 65 kilometers, which is on our previous suicidal descent was the altitude that would give us 5 to 6 Gs of deceleration, which seems reasonable. You can see me going back and forth to the map screen to see whether we are actually going to get antenna coverage, which we're not. We don't have antenna coverage. So I put the flight computer on pro grade, so you can see it actually burning the hydrazine to try and steer it. I don't know if this thing is aerodynamically stable. But as we can see near the periapsis, the Gs are manageable. 3-4 Gs, we're decelerating pretty nicely. We have at least slowed down into a captive orbit, but we are rising again. And the fiery re-entry, the Gs are actually reducing. We are on a terminal descent, but we are actually skipping up a little bit higher out of the atmosphere again, which is giving us a nice chance to cool down and hopefully get in range of another signal station, which we kind of need. I mean, we still have hydrazine to keep us pointed prograde. The flight computer can do that on its own, but we do need command control to release the heat shield. There is just the one parachute, and well, maybe with the heat shield it can slow it down enough so that it can survive. But first, well, this is pretty easy. We're now at 5 kilometers per second, re-entering again. This is a suborbital speed, so this heat shield should do fine, and indeed it does. Taking us down to 40 kilometers, up to 9 to 10 Gs, but electronics can handle that just fine. Much easier than Kerbals at any rate. And here we are decelerating through the atmosphere. The last dregs of hydrazine going down, and we can see now that the craft actually is kind of aerodynamically stable. That's good to know, but we had the hydrazine fuel, now we don't, but we weren't going to use it anyway. Descending now on the parachute through the last couple of kilometers, and the worrying thing here is that the heat shield is a pretty heavy thing, and that's still bolted to the probe. So when it does end up hitting the water, it will do so at a speed of about 10 meters per second, which is a little bit too fast for the probe core, which explodes. Shit. But if there was a person on board, he could have released the heat shield by himself, so it's sort of a success. We don't have the science for it. Anyway, on to the next mission, which is now launching an even heavier payload, the Red Ranger 2. As it says in the description, we're going to try and send a probe to Mars. Time has rolled forward to a launch window as calculated by the transfer window calculator mod, very aptly named, as are many of these mods. The thing is, with this rocket, I put on quite a beefy 2 upper stages because I want the storable propellants to be able to fine-tune maneuver nodes and maybe do some correction burns mid maneuver, but they're heavy because they're not efficient. You can really see the first stage struggling here, and well, this is showcases the need for better technology and bigger rockets. And if my timing goes well, we will do this live, the development, more or less right after this episode airs on YouTube. This mission, though, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Unfortunately, surfaced a very premature engine shutdown of the first stage, struggling as it was, and it's immediately apparent that there is absolutely no chance of getting this thing to Mars. Absolutely not. We lost several kilometers per second worth of delta V, and there's just no way to recover from that. What we can do is get some flight time out of these relatively untested engines, and maybe get another ComSat into some kind of orbit. This is the RD-0210 engine that is using the storable propellants, but only has the one ignition. Anyway, it's not too important for this mission. As I said, we have a ComSat in orbit, and fortunately, we did build two Red Ranger rockets to prepare for just the eventuality we had. So we refurbished the launch pad, and we're just a few days out of the launch window, blasting off the second rocket. We're gonna try this again. Money-wise, we're pretty flush. We can afford this. We can build many rockets and develop technologies and stuff. So that's a good time for the space program. Has been different. Here, this sequence in the launch sequence, you can really see the rocket struggling. This is the first stage after booster separation. It's still almost vertical. The speed is under 2 kilometers per second, and the thrust to weight is just non-existent. This means that we are forced to use a steep trajectory, losing a lot of delta V to gravity drag, and even though the delta V calculation on paper said it would provide plenty of delta V to get to Mars, it is actually a fairly questionable affair. There is additionally the problem that the upper stages don't have control authority because the sensor packages are too primitive. They basically need to burn off a good bit of their fuel before they reach a tonnage that allows the flight computer to control them, and the flight computer is basically just WASD controls. Another thing you may be wondering about is why the hell are there two engines on this upper stage? I mean, in a situation where longer burns are not really a problem, surely the second engine is just a mass penalty, right? Yes and no. I mean, in real life you wouldn't see this a lot, but instead you would design the single engine to last as long as it needs. Now the problem here is that a single one of these engines doesn't last long enough to burn the fuel to get the required delta V. Now in real life you can develop a tougher nozzle or something like that and get your mass penalty that way, because a tougher nozzle is heavier than a flimsier one. But in KSP you cannot do that, so you add a second nozzle with the same burn time, and you get the same effect. So even though it's not realistic, it's also realistic, if you still catch my drift. Anyway, the important bit that I wanted to show you here is that we have to angle up to not fall to our fiery death in the atmosphere. So once again, while this upper stage has the delta V to get to Mars, it's finding it is just wasting it on gravity drag. And why is that? Because the first stage didn't shoot it fast or high enough. That's a problem. And that's a problem we're going to keep running into. The more stuff we try to pile up on the well, by now antiquated first stage we'll be using for about 10 episodes. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop a new rocket from scratch. I'm going to spend all the science points we have in the program, it's a couple hundred. Fast forward time a couple of years to get these science nodes, and then just blast on a stream that will last probably a few hours to, well, shake out a new rocket that's just really good with the tech we have, and, well, use that to power us forwards into the future. Here we are with this Red Ranger mission. After establishing orbit, losing as much as it did to gravity drag, there wasn't even enough delta V to even escape the sphere of influence of the Earth. So once again, it became a ComSat, and well, these probes do have long-range dish transmitters. I'm gonna configure them to point to the active vessel, so hopefully that should help with control outages. Anyway, check out the stream. If it's the 27th of November, check it out for sure. Otherwise, it's going to be archived into the YouTube channel where you'll find it. And, well, as always, thanks for watching. Subscribe to my Twitter, watch the latest video, watch the live stream, or just do whatever the hell you want. You know, it's your life, own choices. See you later.